you know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
Well,
you ought to try
CR that I'm doing it right now, brother.
So, MAGA commentator Scott Jennings joined the show with Caitlin Collins to debate about the government shutdown, a situation Republicans could actually end if they wanted to. But instead, people like Scott Jennings and Speaker Mike Johnson keep pointing fingers at the Democrats. In this video, we'll watch some clips from that CNN debate between Scott Jennings and Karen Finney on Caitlin Collins' show. Let's jump in.
White House is arguing today.
Well, the president did try to bring them into the room the other day, and they wouldn't budge. I mean, look, the facts here are pretty simple. The Republican Party has put on the floor and voted for a clean, continuing resolution, no changes. These are Biden budget numbers, by the way, and numbers that Democrats have voted for 13 times. Nothing up our sleeves here, Caitlin. They're trying to keep the government open long enough to negotiate things like the health care issue, which you were just debating, which I actually think maybe Republicans will wind up dealing on that. But they're not going to do it under duress, and they're not going to do it under threat of rolling back all the Medicaid reforms that were done this summer. So I think President Trump tried to bring the Democrats in. And at the end of the day, I think the American people know here they're looking at two parties. One's trying to do a bunch of funny business. One's trying to keep the doors open. And right now, I don't think the funny business side is winning in the eyes of the American people.
Karen, what's your view on that?
Well, I just want to correct something. You know, Scott, you know how much I respect you, but let's be honest here.
I don't need to be corrected, and I don't need to be told I'm dishonest, Karen. But by all means, go ahead.
I didn't say it. I said let's be honest with the American people here.
I am.
You ought to try CR that I'm doing it right now, brother. So the CR is that the Republicans have proposed is actually not clean. It's pretty dirty because it includes the $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts that the American people themselves have made clear they do not like. So it is not the same. I think it would be a very different moment and conversation if literally we were talking about what was passed in 2024. That is not the actual fact of the case. The fact of the case is that the measure is something that, again, the American people themselves have said they do not like. The other piece of this is, I think Democrats have a clear, concise message in terms of health care. Think about this. Republicans are on the side of saying we have to protect these tax cuts for billionaires. That's going to impact the wealthiest 1%. Democrats are saying we want to protect health care for over 20 million American families. And I agree with what, I was glad Senator Smith pointed out. I also just got my email today about my health care and choosing a plan. So people are already seeing that their costs are going to go up starting in January 2026. So I think Democrats feel pretty strong about this because the politics have changed. And, the last thing I would just say on this, my first government shutdown, Scott, I know you've been through a few of them too, was in the Clinton administration. And the kind of backslapping, oh, we're just joking that we heard from the vice president today. Well, we heard that from Newt Gingrich, and he was, bracing for the fight. And we all know how that worked out. I don't think the American people like seeing the president make light of their health care or their jobs.
Scott, you want to respond?
Yeah, sure. Look, we're stunned. I'll just be honest with you. We're stunned. The Democratic constituencies are principally immigration populations and government workers. And right now,
I'm a Democrat, and I'm not an immigrant, and I'm not a government worker.
You're putting one on top of
yourself.
You're putting one on top of the other.
My mother is a Democrat. She's not an immigrant. She's not a government worker.
This is what your party relies on, and you've closed shop on government in Washington, D.C., and eventually they're going to get tired of it. There is no reason this government cannot be left
Americans open. Who voted.
Honestly, it cracks me up how Scott Jennings gets so defensive the moment someone tells him to be honest, when he's one of the most misleading voices you'll see on TV. He's a regular on Caitlin Collins' show and Abby Phillips' show on CNN, and every time it's just non-stop spin. He constantly pushes talking points that twist the truth. What's even funnier is how he talks about unity, saying the president wants everyone to work together, while Trump is literally out there telling Republicans not to negotiate with Democrats. Scott Jennings knows that, and yet still acts shocked when someone calls him out. The whole thing just feels fake and performative. Honestly, he might be one of the most insincere pundits on television with that smug attitude and forced confidence.
For Kamala Harris, we're all immigrants?
No, I'm saying
that's not true.
I'm saying I'm listening to Democratic arguments about most policy issues, and I'm looking at Democratic energy, and it mostly has to do with things to do with immigrants, illegal and some legal, and things to do with government bureaucrats. And right now, you're putting one of your constituencies out of business.
Can I say one thing, which is that people who are in the country...
In the Trump administration and MAGA people like Scott Jennings are trying to put the other constituency out of business, federal workers. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with being a federal worker.
Legally cannot get these subsidies
Sure
that we're talking about.
Sure they can.
No, they can't.
No,
Sure
they
they
can't.
can.
It's federal law, Scott,
who do you think? Who do you think pays when they go to the emergency room? It's the Medicaid
Scott,
emergency program.
Going to the emergency room is not getting an Obamacare subsidy.
You guys are conflating. You guys are conflating these issues. You're conflating these issues.
And you're being dishonest with
the subsidies are a separate issue. The Medicaid program cuts are a different thing.
Right, but I'm talking about subsidies.
And the Obamacare stuff are two different issues. And I said the subsidies may get negotiated over time, but what Democrats want to do is roll back what the Republican Medicaid reforms were. They want, look, I don't understand why everybody's so mad. For time immemorial, Democrats have argued that it's good. It's good for illegal immigrants to get Medicaid. Every candidate for president in 2020 raised their hand for it. In the big, beautiful bill debate, they argued it was good policy. I can't believe there's an about-face in the Democratic Party on it today.
Hold on. I got a question for Karen, but Scott, I will say...
Sure.
People who are in the country illegally also can't get Medicaid.
Sure they can.
Law.
Sure they can.
They can't get Medicaid.
They also
Medicare,
can't register to vote. They also can't register to vote, but we just found one in Maryland who was running the Des Moines school system.
Oh my God, one!
I mean, I'm telling you, you guys say these things can't happen, and then they happen.
Scott, but I'm just saying it's federal law. And
you can run cover. You can run cover for it if you want, but they do get federal tax money. They get federal tax money. Ask Jake. He had it on today.
I'm just saying it's against federal law to do that.
It is.
Karen, can I ask you, because one thing that we've heard from Democrats over the last several months is that the president's consolidation of power is dangerous. That's how Democrats have framed this. But now what House Speaker Mike Johnson, the point he was making here last night, is that Democrats have handed the president more power by shutting the government down, because now they're canceling and stopping these contracts and saying they're going to fire a bunch of federal workers during this period. Was that a mistake in your view?
Well, but again, the president, it's a choice that the president can make. I mean, governing is all about choices, right? The leader of the country can say, hey, I'm going to protect tax cuts for billionaires, or I'm going to make sure over 20 million American families can get the subsidies they need to afford their health care and not see it double. And by the way, Russell Vought is not someone who, this government is, we know they're going to doge their way through the rest of the federal government anyway. I don't think there's much credibility in saying, hey, we're going to use this to lay people off. I mean, I just want to consider, it's a different pot of money, but think about the optics. The White House confirmed to Fox News today that the construction of the Grand Ballroom will continue while they are talking about laying people off and potentially firing people. That is outrageous. If you're serious about negotiating, as the senator said, you don't do things like that. You say, we are going to bring everybody to the table. Let's see what we can get done. And Scott, part of the reason this issue around the ACA credits, as the senator, I think, pointed out, there's not a lot of credibility here. So let's act like adults. Let's come to the table and stop making threats about, we're going to fire these people and we're going to, you know what, you're the leader. It's your job to bring people together.
Scott Jennings really is the perfect example of a MAGA spokesperson. He just captures that whole attitude. He's always got that little smirk going, raising his eyebrows like he's sending secret signals to someone watching at home. It's almost like he practices these expressions before going on air. If you've watched him on Caitlin Collins' show or Abby Phillips' show, you've seen it. The constant camera looks, the little smug smiles, all of it. Then he repeats this same old MAGA talking point that undocumented immigrants are getting Medicaid, which simply isn't true. This policy goes back decades to the Reagan era. It's not about giving Medicaid to undocumented people. It's about reimbursing hospitals for emergency care when someone can't pay. But Scott Jennings and others keep twisting it because it sounds good politically. And then comes the other classic myth, voter fraud. He points to one case like it's proof of a nationwide crisis, but every major study has shown that real voter fraud barely exists. We're talking a fraction of a %. In most cases, it's just someone making a mistake, not an organized plot. Ironically, when fraud does show up, it often ends up being on the Republican side. Scott Jennings, like a lot of MAGA media voices, just keeps pushing the same false stories over and over. That's why debates like this one on CNN with Caitlin Collins are so telling. They show how far some people will go to spin a narrative. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think. Do you agree with Karen Finney, or do you think Scott Jennings made any solid points? Drop your thoughts in the comments, leave a like, and subscribe for more. I'm Kelvin Parker, and I'll see you in the next one.